an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, chapters 8, 9, and 10. In these chapters, Clemensia, whose throat was cut, dies, and then another girl gets bitten by a bunch of multicolored snakes and lives. Kind of. It's not great for her either. Dr. Gall, what is up? Welcome to Unspoiled.
Are you coming to the tree? They strung up a man, they say, who murdered 3. Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree where a dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you?
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm RoShawn. And I want to just say really quickly, this is not a crisis because all the chapters have been read, so we are fully prepared. But I thought that we ended with her throat getting slit. And the little graphic for the chapters this week are 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Right.
So you said 8, 9, and 10.
7, 8, 9, and 10. I thought we ended with her getting her throat cut in the last
chapter 6 ends with her throat being cut, and then 7 is the immediate aftermath.
Okay. So it's all I didn't read ahead.
No.
It's just that I didn't include chapter 7 when Gotcha.
Okay, cool.
I had a real panic attack that
Sorry.
Okay.
No, because you have it it was 4 chapters this week to read, so I did read everything.
Right.
You didn't spoil me on anything. I just wanted to make sure, because for a second I was like, did we talk about 7 last week? And
Man. All right. So, question, just out of the gate, did you think Clemensia was going to die when she got her throat cut?
One of the last things we talked about was, I was like, I don't know, getting your throat slashed, that could be pretty serious. It depends on how deep the knife went. We're
still looking for the cure for 27 stab wounds. How does that line go? You know the one I'm talking about. We're Simpsons referencing hard over here, kids.
But no, I ended up being like, oh shit, damn, she died for real. We're doing this. We're really doing this. Cause they could have, it would have been not as impactful, but the shock of everything, cause it was all broadcast and everybody was there. If she didn't die, we still would have had enough of a catalyst to move the story forward in whatever direction it wanted to go. But she died, and I was like, oh shit. And then a bunch of other people died.
Yo. Yeah, this is a very no holds barred sort of situation. Feels like for me,
the
was just cracking her knuckles, okay, let's do it.
I'm starting to wonder. I think I made a throwaway comment about not being sure if we ever even get to the games in this book or not. Mm-hmm. At the rate we're going, who the fuck is going to be left for the goddamn games? But yeah, so 7 starts like right after the attack, and people are just going it's mayhem. And I'll tell you what, y'all, and I said it before, and I'm forced to say it again. Corio Snow continues to just have a sense of presence in these wild circumstances. Some people are able to always be aware of how they're being perceived, right? Mm-hmm. Like they exist both internally in themselves, but also they have like an eye in the sky that's pointed at them, and they can see how everything they do looks to everyone who's watching.
Yeah.
And he does it again, even though he is as stunned and repulsed and about to retch and can't believe what he's seeing. He still has the presence of mind to be like, it won't look good if I recoil. Mm-hmm.
Lucy kind of snaps it out of him, because he does start to recoil, like, until she just says, do something.
Yeah. And then this line, his terror was a private thing, not meant for public display.
That is one of the whitest things I've ever heard.
It is. It's given Wasp. It really, really is. But it is, I don't even know if self-awareness is what I want to say here.
Self-possession?
Self-possession. He has such a laser focused idea of who and what he is, and that is always like paramount. And that he returns back to that. I have to believe that it is. I don't think you can be this if it is not fucking for real.
Yeah, I agree.
Like he might swing, like the way I'm about to fuck up my astronomy here, because I can't remember what orbits what. But he may like fly off course a little bit every once in a while, but he course corrects almost immediately. And I don't think you can maintain this level of consistency if it is not rooted in something that's real, like inside of a person. You know what I mean?
It's an instinctive level with him. Definitely.
Yeah. So he steps up and is trying to, like, he can't do shit for this poor girl. He's trying to, like, put his hand over the wound, but that just makes her gurgle and sort of choke on her own blood. And he's really not doing anything. He's not affecting any real change in her condition and her ability, the likelihood of her surviving. But if it does not look good as shit on camera, that he's there when no one else could, when everyone else is frozen, he's the one that's able to move. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that it's Lucy who spurs him out of his initial shock. Because this is like the second time she's done that for him now. Yeah. But yeah, this whole scene is gruesome as fuck. This poor tribute, who I'm being like this poor tribute who just murdered this girl, but this girl low-key had it coming.
Deserved it.
Little bit. But
fast, bitch.
This tribute gets fucking shot up, and I thought that was like the worst of it. And then I got a chapter or two later.
Shocking. I fully thought, they'll take her and punish her somewhere. It didn't even occur to me that they just shoot her right there. Something about that really got to me, and
are shooting wildly, because a couple of people in the crowd get nicked. I think a couple of tributes get nicked. These peacekeepers, not great at their job.
Nah.
Definitely not keeping the peace.
It's APAB. All peacekeepers are bastards. APAB.
I can't even fucking make the joke. God damn it.
What?
I was trying to throw the K in there and see what it would sound like. So it would be
Ape Cab.
Abcab. Appcab. There it is. Appcab.
Appcab. Okay, yeah, I like that. Appcab. That works. It's got a good ring to it, actually.
But yeah, it's a bloody mess, and then we
sounds like very British for a second. It's a bloody mess.
And he's going home, and this motherfucker is thinking about homework.
Yeah.
He's just like, he walks home with Clemensia and one of the other kids, that Festus kid. I cannot with that name. It's never not going to make
Festus,
me think of Festus.
I know.
I mean, I'm trying to take it seriously. I cannot take it seriously. It was ruined 30 years ago by what I would have called a top tier sitcom, but its legacy is being currently ruined. So now I can't even say that with a straight face. But every time I see Festus, I'm just like, for the rest of us. And then I go like an asshole.
Oh, God.
But so they're walking home, and they're all just like overcome with emotion, and they discuss the homework assignment. And Clemensia is just like, she can't expect us to turn in anything, right? Like, I can't do it tonight after what we just saw. Like, no, It's not right. Plus, this girl was supposed to be part of on the team. She was supposed to be part of this report. And Snow is like, you're right. And then he goes home and does it.
Yeah, he says you're right, and then on the way home, he starts thinking about it, and he's like, you know what? That fucking bitch is the exact type that would be like, you had an assignment. I don't care what happened. You had to do it. Mm-hmm. And so he's just like, she may not ask for it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it just in case.
Yeah.
And he can't. It turns out to be a really good call.
It turns out that this is like a way for him to deal with his own trauma from what's happening, because he can't really sleep, either. And I love when he gets home and his grandmom is just like, I fucking told you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's and I want to point out again, the way this whole thing is written is there is never ever a moment where Coriolanus is sad for the sake of Arachne having died.
No.
He is shaken by the suddenness of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
He is repulsed by the blood. He is very focused on how he looks as he does something.
Yep.
And then on the way home, he's trembling. It's not like it hasn't affected him, but there's no empathy bound into it. It doesn't feel like.
There's a moment where he recollects about how long this young girl has been a part of his life, which is forever, his entire life. He is a line that says that as part of the wealthy old guard of the capital, she was family, and you didn't have to like your family. The bond was given. They've played since they were infants together. They've been in all the same classes together. They've been through everything together. He has this whole reminiscence, but you're right. It is devoid of any actual emotion. Yeah. It's just like he's reciting some facts about, like, he's like going through a checklist of their relationship. And he wasn't fond of her. And we just mocked her death a little bit a minute ago, low-key. Like, we didn't particularly care for her either. But we also didn't know her our whole lives, right? Like, he did.
The fuck do I care?
And, and there's you're right. There's no real. It says that she hadn't been his favorite person, but she'd always been in his life. That's like as close as we get.
Yep.
To
and
anything that would come close to be grief
around her role in his life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about her as a person. It's just like oh, she's always been around. And it just feels still somehow self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I am really on the reread trying to like put myself in the headspace of Suzanne Collins trying to write this character and how tricky it must be when you are used to certain emotions that most people would have and you can't write them having that reaction to things because they're not like most people, and how that must be really, really hard, you know? Yeah. And I just think that's a lot of where my feeling of disconnect on reading it came from, is the fact that like he is a disconnected character, like from his own humanity in a lot of ways. So that's just a side effect of who he is. So it's almost like she wrote him a little too well. You know what I'm saying? Or like, I don't know.
Yeah. He's very, very difficult to have empathy for. He's very difficult to know in a way that makes you feel connected to a character. You know how after you're reading a little while, you're like, okay, I get it. I get who this is. I get what this is.
Yes.
You know, he's very slippery.
Yes, it's a good word.
And he also, and I wish I could think. I think it comes up in a later chapter, but he says the right things, but thinks all the wrong things.
Yep.
You know, so if we weren't in his POV, you know, and I was reading from someone else and they were giving me their assessment of him, I would probably see him through their eyes and be like, well, there's a very capable, self-assured young man who knows where he's going and has got everything under control, and look at him being helpful to his tribute, and look at him trying to save his classmate, you know, and isn't that grand? But when you're inside his head and you see how calculating he is, you're just like, oh shit, dude, you needed someone to talk to.
It's like, it's so true too. Like what you're saying about like, if you were on the outside looking, the way he reacts to things looks correct. It's clearly a major part of why he winds up getting into power, because he convinces everyone around him that he is a normal person who gives a shit and is it's very chilling to me to think about how often does this happen in life where I see somebody doing something and I admire that in them. And if only I knew the reason they were doing it, my whole opinion would change
instantly
but I'm making assumptions based on my own reaction. Of course, that's what we all do. I see somebody like bending down to help this girl who's just had her throat cut, and I'm thinking, this person's doing this because, oh my God, I can't believe this horrible thing happened to her. Is she okay? No. He's like, it's gonna look bad. That's his first thought. It's not about her at all. And so how often do I do this? Just assign a motivation that isn't there for something, you know?
Like I just had two thoughts. Like one, like imagine if we had been in Finnick's POV the first time he saves Peeta in the books, right? And we know that was clearly a calculated move, that he didn't really give a fuck about Peeta living or dying.
Right.
It was part of the deal to save Peeta, right? And how different, how that changes that whole thing. But when you're reading it from Candace's point of view, all we see is Finnick doing this, apparently, this supposedly selfless act. And you're just like, wow, look at him go. Look at him being a hero. And there's a moment after Coriolanus is
just say Corey.
I think I will just call him Corey. He has a moment in the shower, and he's scrubbing off the rest of the blood, and he starts to sob, a painful sobbing that made his chest ache. But then it passed, And he wasn't even sure if it had to do with sorrow over her death or unhappiness over his own difficulties. Probably some of both. And that's it.
If you have to ask, I don't feel like it's about her. Like, not about the sorrow.
Right.
I don't feel like if you ask yourself that question, that's...
And like, I completely understand that it can be a multitude of things happening inside a person all at once, right?
Oh,
so
sure.
if it's both, that's not necessarily a crime that it's both.
No.
But the fact that he can't tell is concerning.
Yeah, I often have wondered about people like this. Are they aware something's not right with them? Do they know? You know, like there was a
psychopath TikTok. They know. I somehow ended up on that. I somehow ended up on psychopath TikTok. I don't know how I got there.
I don't want to go there, but that's interesting.
There's a lot of people who claim to have actual DXs and talk about what it is like from their point of view, like how they move through the world. It's very interesting. I don't know how much of it to take seriously because, you know, it's fucking TikTok and who knows who's doing what. You know, it could be saying any fucking thing. Some of it is quite interesting, especially the women. The men are all just like are cosplaying the Joker, but there's a lot of women that I find very interesting.
So tedious. Yeah, I remember this moment that really got to me. It was in a preview, and it was like what got me to watch the thing. But there was some, I think it was a miniseries where David Tennant plays this serial killer, a real person who would target men. And eventually a neighbor finds a piece of a human being in a drain. And they go and investigate in his home, and they find like 6 dead bodies in the apartment that have been there for a long time. And it really reeks. It's a really and this is all based on true events. And when I went and read up on it, I was just like, this is how is this even worse than the drama thing?
David Tennant was in it?
Yeah. He plays the serial killer.
Shit.
And he sits down, and this is again in the preview, and the detective sits down and says, why did you kill these guys? And he says, and he's smoking his cigarette in the scene and doesn't make eye contact, just says, I was really hoping that you could tell me.
Well, shit.
And it just struck me. It was just like the idea that you don't even know why? Really? And it never occurred to me that you could be doing something like this and genuinely not know what's driving you to do. Like, I always think of serial killers as having some sort of thesis, you know, there's some kind of ethos around it. I'm assuming that makes no sense to me, but would to them. But this guy is just sort of like, yeah, I don't get it either. It's weird, right?
Wow.
And that just stuck with me so hard. So yeah, that's sort of what I wonder.
I'm intrigued.
If you asked him, would you be getting a real? Would he? I know that in reality, he would give you a textbook answer that sounds great and has to do probably with nobility of family or whatever. But if you were able to convince him, no, I've been inside your head. I know that's not why you're doing this, but I'm still not quite getting why you are.
Yeah.
Would he really have an answer for that?
I think the Snow in this book, the younger Snow, may be disquieted by that question. Older Snow is inflappable, is not going to be interested, not going to be confused or caught off guard, and like you said, would have an answer ready to go. But this younger version of him, I think if somebody were to ask him that, I think he would pause. And even if he did come out with an answer, because that's just how he moves, we've seen it time and time again, I think internally there would be a moment of being like, what the fuck? Wait, what is this?
Yeah.
And then I'd be really curious how he explains it away to himself to end up where we know he ends up.
Yeah.
You know? And it's possible. I mean, it's still very early in the book. Maybe that question is posed to him. Maybe he does have to confront that at some point. You know, because he clearly he knows who he is at this point, but the introduction of Lucy into his world is starting to challenge certain things he's taken for granted. And we've seen him react to those challenges, by doing things that are like slightly out of character, even though he frames them in a way and is able to flip and spin them, really is the word I'm looking for. He's able to spin them so that they benefit him. But like the impulse to meet her at the train and to go to the zoo and then, the bringing her food and wanting her to sing. These are things that are all self-serving, but they're also things that Lucy is bringing up in him that I don't think he quite has clocked yet. Mm-hmm. And if that trend continues, I think maybe we might get a moment of Snow having to really decide who he is and what it is he wants. And we know, because this is a prequel, we know how he ends up. So we know that eventually that he made a decision that who he wants to be is a man of power and prestige and regaining everything that was taken from him, getting back all that was owed him. But I'm very curious if this thing with Lucy is going to force him to, because a lot of his behavior, even though I know we're spending a lot of time talking about him and not so much talking about what's happening in the chapters. I apologize for that, but
I don't.
It feels very much like he's been performing a role for so long that he's very adept at it at this point when we've met him. But he's been performing it because this is just kind of how he was raised to be. And he's never had to ask himself the question of, do I want to be who I've been raised to become? Is that really what I want? And maybe that is what's going to be at the heart of this instead. Maybe that's really the story I'm about to read. And I know eventually he does decide, that is who I want to be. And maybe there's some heartbreak or some heartache that pushes him further down that road. But so much of him is performance, Yeah. And I think when I think about my reaction to the Snow of the movies, right? Because that's who I see now whenever he comes up. I see, because we got so little of Snow in the actual books. So I'm really operating from the movies when I'm reading this book now. He's so controlled and so measured most of the time. And it's because it's been a lifetime of performing from what appears to be a very young age. So that's my take on him for right now, anyway.
I just want to mention, because you were saying that miniseries sounded interesting. It's called Des, D-E-S. And
right. I remember now.
Yeah. And it's apparently like all over the place. It's on Amazon. It's on Turner. Is it AMC? Not Turner Classic Movies. What does AMC stand for?
It used to be. Was that American Movie Classics?
I think you're right. Yeah. But anyway, if anybody wants to watch it, it's quite good. But it is somewhat disturbing for sure.
Jeffrey Dahmer glasses.
I know, right? It's like a fucking trademark at this point. You see those glasses as a red flag. It's a weird response I have to seeing that, but
I think I had those glasses.
So he goes home, like you said, cries in the shower. Tigress and his grandmother are like really worried about him, and there's just a sort of sense of like, maybe we shouldn't have you be their mentors anymore. And I was really interested actually in the question of like, when did we decide that capital kids wouldn't be their mentors? Eventually we made a full transition to it being the previous tributes. And I have to assume, and forgive me guys, if this is something that actually is like mentioned at any point, and I'm spoiling her because I have forgotten, but I genuinely don't remember it. And so I don't think so. But I'm wondering if he is the person who is like, yeah, we're not doing that again. You know, did he decide? Because like, he saw firsthand how much it humanized this tribute for him. And he was like, well, can't have that, you know?
I mean, that I love that theory. I would counter. I would say it would take several years in order to have enough living tributes, victors, to be mentors. So
That's
I
true.
would be. My question is, maybe there's an interim period where he's like, yeah, we're not doing capital people as mentors anymore. So we're going to reap tributes and we're going to reap mentor.
Yeah.
Until the numbers got to a place where they could then be like, okay, you won last year, so now you're a mentor this year. Because it's going to take multiple games. And not every district is going to win. You know, there's going to be years where, like, you know, District 12 only had the one.
Right.
75 years. So it's going to take a long time before they have enough people to get rid of all the capital mentors, unless they just start taking people from the districts to be mentors. Or, no, that doesn't make any sense. Because that's still I was going to say they pick capital people, but not students. Maybe older people that are less impressionable, less likely to be swayed. You know what I mean? I don't know where they would pluck them from. I don't know if it would be faculty or game makers or how they would do that. But maybe they decide, maybe having literal children, you know, young adults, teenagers, be mentors is not the best idea.
Yeah.
But, you know, we could get away if they're like teachers.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious. Okay. Well, keep it in mind. So then we have this moment where everybody has to go back to class the next day, and the list of the tribute, like the mentors, everybody automatically crosses off the girl from District 10 because she's dead. So we're done with that. But when it comes time to cross off Arachne's name, it feels different is the way it's described. And he doesn't cross it off.
Yeah. It feels wrong.
Yeah.
And I imagine because, you know, you can't treat a capital person the same way you can a district person. You can't just cross their name out like they're nothing and they're nobody. Which is really a very stark reminder of the difference between district and capital, that they can't even bring themselves to cross her name out. I love, too, how angry fucking Clemensia is when she finds out that he did this homework assignment without her.
It's so funny.
I can't believe you wrote up some proposal while her body was still warm. I cried all night. What were you doing?
Yeah.
And then,
he like really manages to spin it again as like, oh, it was dealing with grief. Although maybe it was like I said, he's shaking and crying. It's not like he had no reaction, but the reaction is just, it's devoid of what I would assume it would have.
Yeah. Like he says he can't sleep. Like there was no chance he was going to be able to fall asleep at all. Even his mother's compact didn't like calm him down at all. So, I mean, if we're being generous, it's a way to handle grief, but it's really, really convenient that the way he handles grief is also the most serving.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That's funny how that worked out.
So they go to Dr. Gall with this paper.
She is so mad.
It is the weirdest. You guys, this whole interaction.
I am trying.
Oh, she is so scary.
So Clemensia is bugged out because she doesn't know what's in this proposal, and she's really worried that she's going to look like an idiot, that she doesn't know what's happened. What if she gets asked any questions? He's promising he'll cover for her. He's trying to fill her in. And, you know, so they're concerned about being found out that he did this project on his own. Right. And it's almost to the point where it seems as though Clemensia is overreacting, right? It's the way it's written. I almost found myself being like, girl, it's going to be fine. Relax. Mm-hmm. Y'all, it's not fine. She should not have relaxed.
It isn't.
This fucking Dr. Gall, who is like so ghoulish at this point. Mm-hmm. She has the proposal in a tank with these snakes that she's been experimenting on, and when we get that later reveal, the places that my brain went, I don't know if the doctor that came with the explanation was telling the truth or not, but I did not believe him. But we'll get to that.
What explanation?
When the Clemensia shows up in the hospital after the bombing, and she reveals she's turning, she's changing colors, and her skin is flaking and all scaly and shit. All I can think of is the mutations. I'm just like, are we doing this? Did she do that to that girl? Is that what's happening? But then the doctor was like, no, the venom in the antidote has a weird side effect. She's going to be fine in a couple of days. And I'm like, all right, maybe. But yeah, so she puts the paper in this aquarium type deal with these snakes, and it's like, yeah, it's fine, just put your hand in there. As she's asking these questions about, you both wrote it, huh? Just the two of you? Your friend didn't have anything to say before her throat was cut? I was like, good God, lady, what are you doing?
Yeah, she's doing a lot here.
Your brassy friend weigh in before her throat was cut? These are children. And Clemensia is just like, yeah, we wrote it. We were in the library all night. Yeah, barely slept.
You just want to like reach out and be like, because she decides to tell her specifically on her own. And this was something, remembering that this was coming, I was like, how does she get them in a way that like they have admitted she touched the paper and like established that. And then I read the scene, and Clemensia volunteers that information. It's not even asked. She's so busy lying and this is the thing that so many people say, you can tell when somebody's lying when they give you too many details. And this is like a moment where I'm just like, yeah, girl, how about you just shut up? If you just shut up and not like establish
nobody asked
the thing
you for additional information. You could have just like
she wouldn't
left it.
Like eventually made her say the words in another way, because clearly Dr. Gall is working on getting to this point any way that she can, it seems. But it was just startling to like go back and realize,
she said it.
You just not said it. Yeah.
He's like, I printed it out last night in my apartment, and then I gave it to Corey so he could drop it off this morning. And Dr. Gall is like, word? Really? That's what happened? And Corey is just like, well, I dropped it off. I did drop it off this morning because he's being really careful.
Yeah.
And Dr. Gall says, I just wanted to make sure you'd both had your hands on it. And neither of them, I mean, I guess they're not really in a position. My garage band is just not doing this thing tonight. I'm sorry.
All right. It's all right. Zencaster's got it, it looks like. Fingers crossed.
All right, cool. All praises the Zencaster. But yeah, so she's just like, I wanted to make sure you both touched it. And neither of them are like, that's a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
And fucking Corey is like, well, I can show you the parts where the group discussed and how we got there. And they don't even have a copy. And the guards took their book bags. And she's like, well, I've got a copy. We could use the one that I have. But my assistant just happened to have lined this very case with it while I was having my lunch. And she laughs. And that's when they look down and realize that the paper is in the fucking case with all the fucking snakes.
Yeah.
And Dr. Gall is like, suppose you two retrieve it. It felt like a test. A weird Dr. Gall test. Yes. That is correct.
It should feel like that. Indeed.
So Snow goes first. He puts his hand in, gently moves around, gets a piece of paper, starts to slide it from under the snakes. And he tells Clemensia, they didn't even really notice me. And she's like, all right, well, it's my turn. And she sticks her hand in there. And Dr. Gall says they can't see or hear too well, but they know you're there. Snakes can smell you using their tongues. And as soon as Clemensia touches this paper, the snakes start fucking going wild.
Yeah.
And
she says, like, if they know your scent and have a positive association with it, you'll be fine. But if they don't recognize your scent, and the two of them both are clearly like realizing what she's saying, just as she's in the line of fire and it's too late.
Yep. And Dr. Gall says, if they don't recognize your scent, you'd be on your own, little girl. This is an adult.
Yeah. She don't care. She don't care.
Yeah, so then they fucking go bonkers, and then they just start biting into her, and it's all of these little snakes all up and down her arm and her hands and her fingers. And, you know, doctors show up, lab assistants or whatever, and they give her an antidote right away and then take her out. And Snow is about to leave, and Dr. Gall's like, nah, not you. You're going to stay here. And he's all flustered. Will she die? Anybody's guess.
The fact that she says it like that, I swear to God, it's so fascinating to see how this woman, like, she doesn't feel the need to pretend at all, you know?
Unhinged. And I know that is a word that's in the zeitgeist right now, and we're all saying it, but it's a good fucking word, and we should have been saying it.
It is. It is. Fully agree.
He says, she says, clearly her scent wasn't on the paper. You wrote the paper alone. I did. There's no point in lying. Lying had probably killed Clemensia. Obviously, he was dealing with a lunatic who should be handled with extreme care.
That is correct, sir.
Just understood a little too late. Like if he had understood this a page and a half ago, maybe we could have saved Clemensia.
It's also funny to me, like how he did know Gall well enough to know that she was going to want this fucking project done, regardless. Yep. So he was like verging on getting it, you know. But I don't think anybody was prepared for
this.
Who's gonna predict that she would feel completely free to like potentially kill a student and not worry at all whether she makes it or not? Like,
these are capital students from prominent families, whether they are in the various states of disrepair or not. Still, these are like the cream of the crop students here. And she is just like, meh for the one that got her throat slit. Meh for this one right here. Talk about fuck them kids.
Yeah. Strong fuck them kids energy. Indeed. Indeed.
And then she threatens Snow with just like, if you lie to me again, I'll cut you off. And if the dean punishes you for that, I'm not going to like fucking stand in his way. Do you understand what I'm saying right now? And she says, lies are attempts to conceal some sort of weakness. Mm-hmm. And I really, that line really, don't think I had ever thought about a lie in that framing before. And I thought that was just a really interesting. What are lies but attempts to conceal some sort of weakness? And I think that actually checks out for the most part, you know?
Right, it does sort of seem to withstand initial investigation. Just sort of like, is that, like, weakness is an odd word choice, but if you want to view it that way, it's...
Right.
You can do that.
It stands up.
Yeah.
But, so he's like, yeah, no, you don't have to worry about that for me. I'm good. And then she's like, all right, we're done now. I got snacks.
This bitch. I swear to God. So he has to like, this is so awful, you guys. He hurried off, made a wrong turn, then another, and found himself in a ghoulish section of the lab where the glass cases house humans with animal parts grafted to their bodies. Tiny feathered ruffs around their necks, talons, or even tentacles in place of fingers, and something, perhaps gills, embedded in their chests. His appearance startled them, and when a few opened their mouths to plead with him, he realized they were Avoxes. Their cries reverberated, and he caught a glimpse of small black birds perched above them. The name Jabberjay popped into his mind. So, I don't know what they're for, except to punish the Avoxes for making a sound by repeating their, like, wailing to them, which is really grim. Like, this whole thing is so grim. Anyway.
I was thinking that maybe the Jabberjays were there just because it's a continuing experiment, but your theory that they are there just to sort of mock the Avoxes and torment them with their own sounds is so fucking dark, and almost to be like, okay, Miss Collins, I need you to calm down. Like, everybody just take a minute. Everybody take a minute, relax, take a breath. Because also what this did for me, and I don't know why, because it was so graphic and we met so many different types of mutations throughout the first 3 books. But when we talked about the Jabberjay and the Tracker Jackers, right? Those are animals that have been modified, you know? And as grotesque as that is, but I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the other mutts that they encountered. Like the ones that kind of looked like fallen tributes, you know?
Right.
I had, throughout the entirety of the original 3 books, just blacked out any thing that would make me think about the type of human experimentation that would have been required to get these results.
Yes.
I just chose not to consider it. I just never once thought about it. And I think it was definitely by choice, even if it was subconsciously. I just was like, you know what? No. Don't want to do that.
I get it.
And now I have a paragraph where it's like, bitch, you're going to have to do that. Because we're just going to tell you. We're going to just tell you that, yes, that is what's happening here. And that we are experimenting on Avoxes who we know are people who have been deemed worthy of any kind of punishment that we, you know, the Capitol deems fit.
Sees fit to dole out, yeah.
You know, a fucking course. And I can't believe I did such a good job of having that barrier up in my brain.
I remember us bringing up the possibility that these were like maybe the tributes themselves, and we both decided to decide, and I say it like that because like, we acknowledged like within our drawing conclusions that we were choosing what we preferred, but we decided that it was likely that when they like got the tributes in the first place, they collected data to create these creatures with the eyes that matched. And after reading this, I am not as confident about that assessment as I was.
It wasn't even just us. I think in the text it even has maybe Peter saying it to Katniss or the other way around, being like they probably just manipulated them to make them seem as if they were the tributes.
Yeah.
And I 100% being like, yes, that's what that was. That's much preferable.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know, but everybody listening, what do you think is going on with this? Like, genuinely curious how many people did the same thing you and I did and like assumed the best. And I say the best with a real side eye, but that's the only way I can think to say it. How many of you, decided like, oh, I'm going to think this because I like it better. And did this change your mind at all? I really can't decide how declarative this like reveal is in that regard. It makes me doubt my previous, and then I'm sort of like, but they have to give their bodies back to their families, don't they?
I tell you what,
maybe I don't know that though.
It opens up this little bit. Opened up a door that I would have preferred stay closed, quite frankly, because now I can't think of anything else, and it just seems like everything else doesn't make as much sense as the horrifying truth of the matter, which is that we have this genius yet unwell person with endless resources and left to her own devices to do whatever she wants to do, and she's in charge of all this. And knowing the little bit I know about her, of what I've met her so far, Dr. Gall, it doesn't seem like anything is too far. There is no line that can't be crossed, The fact that she ends this entire interaction with, okay, you can leave now. I have crackers and milk on deck.
Yeah.
What? It's just, and that's how she dismisses him. She's done. We're done here. Yeah. So, I don't know. Yeah, I'd be interested with what people have to say about that, too. I'd like to think that we were all in denial together. That would make me feel better.
Right.
So, if you guys want to write in with that.
So, okay. This has really shaken him. And again, I really want to point out that what he's thinking is not poor Clemensia. The Capitol was supposed to protect them. He thought of Sejanus telling Dr. Gall it was the government's job to protect everybody, even the people in the districts. But he still wasn't sure how to square that with the fact that they'd been such recent enemies. But certainly, the child of a Snow should be a top priority. He could be dead if Clemensia had written the proposal instead of him. He buried his head in his hands, confused, angry, and most of all, afraid. So again, there is a moment here. Coriolanus nodded up at the memory of the fangs sinking into flesh. Poor Clemmy. Could she really be dead? And that's pretty much as you get. And in that nightmarish way, if she was it his fault for not calling her out for lying? It seemed such a minor infraction, but would Dr. Gall place blame on him for covering for her? If she died, he could be in all kinds of trouble. It's not oh my God, I hope she doesn't die because I care at all, really. It's just, that would fuck me right up. I sure hope not, you know? Ew. Dude.
Yep. And it's wild because he's compelled to go try to find her at a hospital to, like, you would think, check on her to make sure she's okay because you want her to be okay because you are a decent person. But after that introduction, it can't feel like anything other than, I hope she's okay because I don't want to get in trouble. You know?
Yeah.
That preface just, there's no other way to read what happens next other than him needing to be reassured that she's going to be fine. She's going to recover. The antidote was given to her right away. There's every reason to believe she would survive. There might be some neurological damage, but you know what? It's going to be okay. Come back in a couple days. She'll be ready for visitors. And he leaves, takes her book bag with him, sees her parents rushing in, and hides from them. I think it's very interesting that he does that. Says he didn't know what the Dovecoats had been told, and he had no interest in talking to them, especially before he'd worked out his story. Once again, controlling the story is like the most important thing. It's the lesson that he learned very early from somewhere, and it is his, like, defining fucking principle, is controlling the story.
Yes, exactly. So, and you know what's fascinating to me, and I know I am not an original thinker, okay? I get that this is likely what everybody clocked immediately, and I'm just finally catching up, but so be it. He would absolutely win the Hunger Games.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
He would. That's just it. The stories she writes are about survivors, you know? And, like, he's despicable and has incredibly fucked up priorities, but the whole story with Katniss is her trying to sustain this narrative around herself to stay alive. And that's what he's doing. And that's what Lucy's doing. Although with Lucy, this version of the games isn't developed enough yet for her type of personality to be exploited as much as later the games become such a popularity contest in such a very specific way. So she's like, you know, the start of this, but she isn't given the same opportunities. Katniss is like also having to constantly think about how things look, but it's not instinct with her. He doesn't. No, not at all. And she has to be reminded all the time, like,
fix your face.
Fix your face. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And no one ever has to tell him that. He's always hyper aware of it. I think too, if we want to go there, his disappointment in Katniss is that she can't perform on cue, like just on a dime, in a way that it's interesting that he respects, you know. And as a reader, we value that because it lends itself to her authenticity, and we know that she's not faking it, right? So we buy into it. Like when she's really on, it's because it's real. It's because it matters. She's not just performing for the cameras or whatever. She's very bad at all that, and that's one of the reasons why we love her. And I think as we get to know Snow here, it makes sense that he would be so just kind of like, you're so close. You don't know the gifts that you have. You're so close to having everybody eating out of your hand. Which, and I'm going to shoot on the movies real quick. That there's a speech he gives, I forget in which movie, where he talks about this no-name, barely attractive boring girl from 12, like she's a nobody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to because it's so early in the book, it's way too early for me to be making these kind of judgments. But if I am to believe what I've been told about him so far and his relationship with Lucy Gray, which is still so young and we haven't gotten a lot of that yet, I can see why he would be so disappointed in Katniss, because she would remind him of Lucy in certain ways. And yet she is no Lucy Gray.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know what I mean?
I love that.
She's got the kernels of it, but she's not that type of, because Lucy's also a performer. It's very important that we remember that, right? She's also a performer, and that's something that Snow respects. And Katniss is not a performer, and it's very difficult for him to have any respect for somebody who can't do that.
That's interesting. I love it. I just love that idea of him being like, I'm obsessed with you because I was obsessed with a girl from 12, and you don't hold a candle to her. Oh, right? That's fascinating.
I don't know where this book goes, but imagine you're Snow and you've met a Lucy Gray, and say this story goes in a way where it's like the Hunger Games are bad and we shouldn't be doing it, and I'm going to get Lucy out of it or whatever. And then you see somebody come up, I don't know, 50 years or however long it's been years later, and this girl can't hold a candle to Lucy Gray as far as you're concerned. Mm-hmm. And yet she becomes the face and the voice and the symbol, which when she is, in your estimation, inferior to the original. It's got to be a little galling, especially if you caught feelings, which I feel like he's catching feelings. He hasn't yet,
This is so interesting. I'm just loving the idea of maybe, because I earlier today it was announced that there is going to be another book, Sunset on the Reaping or Sunrise on the Reaping, one of those two, and it's going to be from Hamish's perspective. And when we started this book, and when I started talking to you about it and whether we would cover it or not, I said that part of my issue is I don't really get writing from Snow's perspective, because I feel like there are so many more interesting people that don't suck. And I feel like I'm maybe kind of starting to get it now, that it wasn't about the character as such. It was about, I want to write the polar opposite of Katniss. Somebody who, Katniss is a good-hearted person who comes across really poorly because she has no idea how to deal with people. She doesn't understand the way that she comes across and how folks see her. Mm-hmm. And yet she is really authentic when she wants, when she can be, when she's allowed. Mm-hmm. And what if I write about somebody who is all performance, who is constantly aware of that and is just handles the entire world in such a different way that everybody responds well and has no idea that this person, and maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was Susan Collins being like, I don't really care what you want to read. I care about what I want to write. And what I want to write is a totally opposite person. And I might just be making this up, of course, but I kind of like that idea of her just being like, I just wanted to write this fucking weirdo. What if somebody is absolutely perfect for the Hunger Games, actually, but they just had to play a different game, So now that there's a Haymitch one, right? This is the one that's coming out. And I'm not mad about it. I'm excited that there's going to be another book, and I'm very interested, but I still just wish that we could get something from a person who isn't, whose fate we don't know already, you know?
Right.
And I maintain Tigress. I just really would love a whole book from Tigress's perspective. And I feel like she's the perfect mix of like, we just don't know enough. We don't know where she winds up. And yet she is familiar enough to like be a hook, you know? Mm-hmm. But anyway, Suzanne, if you're listening, please, please, please. What do you think about a Haymitch book? How do you respond to that?
I have some of the same concerns. It's difficult. That's the thing with like prequels, right? Is that it can be limiting because you know where your character ends up. You know what the end game is. So it's difficult to be really invested in the intrigue and the tension of the moments of your reading experience because I know he don't die. Right. I see him 40 years later. He's president, you know? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it removes some of that type of tension. But if you are, like, the thing about Haymitch, what I would like to see is, we know how he won his games. We got that reveal already in one of the first books. Not like great detail, but we know like what he did with like the force field. So I guess I'm not as interested in his games. Like I don't need to see him in the arena, but I would be really interested in what his life is like after he wins, but before he mentors Katniss. Like that's a whole 20 years that we don't know anything about, except that he ends up becoming a drunk.
Right.
So what was it like when he first started to mentor, and you know, and what was his experience like, and how hard did he try, and how many times was his heart broken, and when did he turn, you know, when did he break? What did that look like? Who was in his life? Who did he love? Because by the time we meet him, he's utterly isolated. But I can't imagine he starts out that way. You know, so those are the kind of things that I'm interested in with a Haymitch POV book.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah. I have to be honest. After seeing 2 Hunger Games in a row with the original and then the quarter quell, I don't necessarily need to see another Arena Games. I really don't.
That's also part of how I'm feeling. And it's part of why I picked Tigress. Because, how interesting is it to do this again? I'm not saying it can't be done. But my response initially to the news of it is kind of like, here we go again, you know? And I don't want to feel that way. I want to... Yeah.
But, I don't know. But there's but I feel like there's a lot of story around the games that could be told. It could be very interesting. And like the stuff that's really interesting here in this book is them coming up with the things that we took for granted because they were so well established by the time the first 3 books rolled around. The idea of like placing odds and having people send in gifts to the tributes and trying to get the public invested in a way, and why we need the public invested. This sort of backstory of how impoverished the capital is during this Reconstruction period, and how it has upended this sort of social hierarchy of this very old moneyed society. And the desperation, because really Snow at his core is a desperate young man, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that both in the sense that, like, you know, he is desperate to reclaim what was lost, what was stolen, what was taken, however you want to frame it. Desperate to prove himself. But also someone who is actively in despair and doesn't seem to know it. in a way that informs how he moves through the world. You know, he's had these incredible losses, a loss of his parents, one, a father off in the battlefield, second, a mother who dies basically in childbirth at home. You know, horrific experiences that he recounts to us so matter-of-factly, as if they happened to someone else entirely.
Yeah.
You know, watching him move through his peer group and maintaining this charade of affluence when he's starving. You know, that shit's been wildly interesting to read.
Agree. Definitely. Yeah. Well, all right. So there's so much that I kind of want to say, and then I'm like, that gives too much away. I'm not going to do that.
Meanwhile, it's an hour, and we're still in like the first chapter.
Literally, yeah. We've talked about some later stuff, so like, but anyway, so he goes from here to the zoo, and when he gets there, they're, you know, still chained, and they haven't been fed again. And we find out that there's like rat poison that has been distributed because the rats are trying to chew on them in their sleep. And evidently that stuff isn't doing anything. And he has some crackers that he had gotten, like, and I don't remember if this happens here or if it's later, but here, he had gotten them. That's right.
He got the crackers at the hospital.
Right. But he tells her, like, I brought these for you, which you did not, but okay, sure. You know what? I don't know that he didn't. I'm going to say this, I'm going to go back and read the moment where he decides that he's going to, here it is. The sugar made him feel a bit better, though not enough to try the crackers, which he pocketed. So maybe he did intend to give it to her. I was assuming that they were meant for him, and that in the midst of this conversation, when he finds out that she hasn't been fed, he pretends he brought them for her just because it occurs to him. And I may be not giving him his due, or I might be giving him exactly what he deserves. I don't know.
Yeah. And there is literally
I don't have his, like, best in mind when I think about what his motivation is.
No mention of saving them for her. It just says that he drinks the drink and it makes him feel a little bit better, and that he puts the crackers in his pocket, and by the time the doctor comes back, he's almost in control of himself. So it almost is like he's just too out of sorts to even eat, you know?
Yeah.
But maybe we're not giving him, you know, enough credit.
Exactly.
It's very possible.
Who can tell?
Very, very possible.
So, yeah, this, again, with the, like, you know, her telling him their circumstances and him being, like, genuinely horrified at the thought. And then he says, I'm so sorry about all of this. It's not your fault, she said. You must hate me. You should. I would hate me. I don't hate you. The Hunger Games weren't your idea, but I'm participating in them. I'm helping them happen. His head dropped in shame. I should be like Sejanus and at least try to quit. I can't tell how real this is.
Yeah, this was like after everything.
There's very little of his internal thoughts with this. He
has a moment where he's finding out about the rats, and it says he has a terrible image of her lying dead under a swarm of rats. It wiped away the last few shreds of resistance he had, and despair engulfed him. For her, for himself, for the both of them. And then that's when he apologizes. So I think this might be real.
I think you're right. I think you might be right. It's difficult because the thing is, she is so connected to his, like, the results of what happens to her will affect him so much that it's hard for me to tell when he cares about her how much that originates in him actually caring about her. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And how much of it is just him worrying about what happens to her because it will affect him.
Yeah.
And I really just do not know. I don't know.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, excuse me, that the moments that we have with him and Lucy alone, without the cameras, are probably the closest we get so far, at least, to him being real about anything. Okay. It appears to me, at least, that there is something about Lucy that, I'm going to use the word shames him, but that's because I can't quite think of the other word I want. But there's something about facing her that makes him have to reckon with all that shit that's in him that we talked about earlier. Right? Like, there's something about, and I don't know what it is yet. Like, I don't know if it's just that this, she's just so special and you can't help it, blah, blah, blah. I don't know exactly what it is yet. But there's something about when he has to face her one-on-one, he has great difficulty. It's like the only thing that shakes who he thinks he is. Those are the only moments where he has doubt. Like real doubt in his heart about like who he is and what he's doing. And the moments are very fleeting because she's not a witch as far as I know. She's not like magically changing him into some other kind of person. But and these moments are gone as soon as he's out of her presence, right? As soon as he's away from her, then he's like back to his regular self. But I think that there is something about facing her that causes him to feel great shame, not just in his participation of the games and how inhumane they are, because he's saying this to her in this moment, and I think he means it, and this is going to sound so contradictory, he means it when he's saying it to her, but it is not changing his overall view of the games, at least not yet. I don't know if that's going to happen later. Like, he's not going to leave this conversation and then go to school tomorrow and declare, I will not be a part of this anymore, right? Like, that's not what's happening here. But when he's looking at her and seeing the condition she's in, and then looking at himself and seeing the condition that he's in, he knows that he's on the wrong side of things. But he just doesn't either know how to write that or isn't really the kind of person that's going to go out on a limb and sacrifice themselves for someone else in a big way. You know what I mean? He'll do these little things, you know. He'll sneak her food and you know, take food from Sejanus later on and take it to her and shit like that. Like these little infractions. But nothing that's really going to cost him something that he wants, that's important to him. Right? Because like she says to him immediately when he's like, I should quit. And she begs him, no, please don't. I need you. Like, don't let me go through this alone. And she fucking almost faints because she hasn't eaten in 5 goddamn days. And he goes to her much closer than he's supposed to be after the shit that happened with the other girl. There's like guards all around. And it says he wants to like confess to her everything that happened with Clemensia. He wants to get her advice. And it says, but it all paled in comparison to her situation. And then that's when he remembers the crackers that he has, and he gives it in pocket and like gives her the crackers. But that's what I mean, right? Like being in her presence makes him feel small. Yeah. In a way that I think he's not used to feeling and doesn't really know what it is. And I don't know if he'll ever actually understand what that was, what this is. Guess we'll see.
I guess we will. Or we won't. So she eats. Eventually, they're like, yeah, you got to get the fuck out of here. You're too close. And twice he tripped on his way out of the zoo, and he recognized that he was too tired to come up with any good solutions to anything. I don't know why, but the idea of him like tripping twice on his way out when he is so conscious of his like image just made me very giggly.
I love too that she brings up the idea of having an ally, which apparently is like a new word. He's like, an ally? Yeah. What? How can you have an ally in the games? So yeah. So this is, something that by the time we get to the games in the first 3 books, like it's like understood that that's how this shit rolls. But there was a time when it wasn't like that at all. I kept waiting for him to write a paper really about that too.
This is my favorite part of these books, to be just straight up. I just love the development of the games and imagining how things went from where they are here to where they are in Katniss's life, because it is endlessly fascinating, and it's all rooted right in just how do we dehumanize these people? How do we manage to really make them feel like they are a different species to the people who live in the capital, and make
that's
them
always going to be it.
Complicit in the whole thing, Yep. And it's just really fascinating to me in this sort of like morbid way,
Agreed.
So anyway, on the way out, this is he had the misfortune to bump into his classmate Persephone Price, the daughter of the infamous Nero Price, who'd once cannibalized the maid. They ended up walking together since they were neighbors. She'd been assigned to mentor Mizzen, a sturdy 13-year-old boy from District 4, and so had been present when he and Clemensia had been called from class. He avoided Persephone altogether because he could never help wondering if she had known the ingredients of her wartime stew. For some time, he'd felt afraid of her, but now she only inspired disgust, no matter how many times he reminded himself of her innocence. Yeah, I feel like that was
she's
really
like
me too.
She's like the prettiest girl in school, and all he can think of is, y'all ate a leg. I can't fuck with you.
Yep. Literally. I don't know why, but the idea of just like him being repelled by her, especially considering like it's mentioned that she's the prettiest girl in his class. Can she tell? Does she sense it? He's so careful. I have to think that she doesn't sense it, but I don't know.
I agree with you. I think that he's so careful that she doesn't really pick up on it. And it says here too that while he's with her, she's like so still distraught over the death of Arachne that she's just all caught up in that. She's not even paying attention to him.
Yeah.
So I get the feeling, and I might be reaching, but I'm kind of getting the feeling that this is just how she gets down. That she's just like, especially because she's also like very pretty, but that she probably is just like la 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 la. Like, how could anybody not like me? What do you mean you don't like me? Have you seen me? I'm gorgeous.
Let's see. When he reached the apartment, Grandma took one look at him and suggested a nap before supper. And eventually he gets woken up by Tyrus, who is like, you've got to call Satyria. And he's like, did she ask about Clemensia? And Tyrus doesn't know what he's talking about. And I had sort of wondered if he would just keep it to himself, but he tells her everything.
Tells her the whole story.
Were you surprised by that?
I was relieved. Because I am really invested in this relationship between Tigress and Corey, and especially knowing how it ends. And as much as I dislike him, I really like her. And there's something that is like, she humanizes him. And I need that if I'm going to have a whole book about Snow. So I really enjoy their interactions together, and I love how close they are. And I was really glad that he told her everything. And she is rightfully disgusted and outraged that this would happen, and actually says, "Should you report her?" And he's like, "To who? She's fucking head game maker. Who am I reporting her to?" And Tigress is like, "Okay, don't report or don't confront her, but how about just avoiding her?" And I said, "You know what, Tigress? Yes, good call. That is the good call." And of course, he's just like, "I don't know how much I can. Like, I'm a mentor. Like, I don't know how much avoiding I can actually do." But I appreciated her solution.
Yeah. I get where he's coming from on that, and I don't like Dr. Gall is really dialed into like what freaks people out. So I can't help but think if he tried to avoid her, she would find more reasons to be around him than ever because she sensed he was avoiding her, and 100%. She just like making him uncomfortable, you know, like
100%.
That's just my assumption. But yeah, so there is a conversation with Satyria where she's asking, how are things with your tribute? And he's not really sure how much to tell her. And he finally is like, they haven't fed her. And she's genuinely surprised. And this is something that, you know, has come up a few times of like people just being like, are they doing that? Like there's just such an assumption about the base level of care they're receiving that isn't true. And he also had gotten asked to sing at Arachne's funeral. And he says yes, but then like at the end of this conversation, he remembers, he says to Tigress, "I just remembered I can't really sing." And somehow this was the funniest thing either of them had ever heard.
This fucking funeral, this is like primetime TV viewing. This is the Capitol doing what it does best, making, you know, a pageant out of everything. And he's, you know, he opens up the ceremony, he sings the anthem, and there's this wonderful moment of who says it? Is it his grandma? Somebody says something about it's I'm sorry, I'm getting confused later on. There's something his grandmom says about a family, the Vickers, being like, you know, always wanting to be like in the spotlight. But that happens later. This moment is about Snow talking about Dean Highbottom, how he had accused him of showboating. When Dean Highbottom is just like, you know, going on and on about, you know, how she died for the Capitol and you know, and so on and so forth. So he sings, and then
there's a mention, I just want to point this out, of him like his grandmother coaching him on how to sing this, and there's it says the high note that Grandmam consistently missed was optional. Most people sang it an octave lower, which is true of our national anthem.
Yes! I thought the same thing.
Yeah. And I was like, I tried to set the lyrics that we get for this anthem and see if they match up in like rhythm, and they don't at all. So because I was like, is she saying that it's like almost the same national anthem as ours now in the US, and it doesn't go, but I do like that particular acknowledgement that's just sort of tossed in there and not important because it just made me sort of giggle to myself. Because a lot of people just leave well enough alone and sing it an octave lower, kids. You know?
Yep. Just save yourself. Save yourself. So they have the funeral.
Like sing talks.
Yeah. And gets away with it. And, gets like generous applause, I think he calls it. And they have like her little eulogy, and again, it's completely propagandized. It's all about how like rebels are threatening the peace, and we're gonna honor her sacrifice with the games. The games are going to be in her honor, and then they bring out this flatbed truck that's sort of like in the funeral procession. And it's the tributes all shackled to the truck, and a giant crane with the bullet-ridden body of the girl who slit Arachne's throat dangling over their heads. Yeah. And I had to take a minute, is all I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. This display, it says here, how does he describe it? He says that this was just another chance to remind the districts that they were inferior and that there would be repercussions for their resistance. And he could see Lucy Gray trying to hold on to a shred of dignity, which is impossible to do in these circumstances. Yeah. And he tries to imagine how he would conduct himself under these circumstances, until he realized this was undoubtedly what Sejanus was doing, and he snapped himself out of it. So he has a moment of empathy.
And then slaps himself in the face.
Slaps himself.
You idiot. You
cold water. Splashes some cold water on his face. Snaps right out of it. Yep.
Yeah, this I remember being really shocked because it's uncivilized, and the capital we know manages to cloak everything in such a layer of civility as to make it palatable, and they're not bothering to do that, and it's just jarring to realize like
all of it is so savage and barbaric, and is all lacking the veneer that we grew accustomed to. Everything from the way they're dumped into the zoo and the way they're treated in the zoo, the way they shoot that girl right in front of everybody instead of like whisking her behind closed doors and dealing with her there. It is such a different energy that this capital is working with. And I guess it's because we're talking about a society that is still a stone's throw away from being at war. Like everyone who's alive remembers it. They have memories of what it was like to be at war, whether it's bombs or rations or losing parents. And it does take time to separate yourself from that mindset that we're at war and anything goes to a different sort of, well, we're at peace now, so our brutality has to look a little bit different, has to be a little shinier, and also they're still actively dehumanizing the people of the districts. They like Sejanus is such an interesting character. We don't talk about him much in these chapters, but the fact that you have somebody that moved upward from a district into capital life, and we know that he's sort of like a one-off, but I don't know if he's literally the only family to do it or not. But the distinction, the lines between the capital and the district are felt like very what's the word? They're palpable, right? Profoundly, like palpable. They're right there, but they're there because of recent memory, right? They're there because of lived experiences. What they haven't completely finished doing yet is the dehumanization of the people in the districts. And it's these kinds of actions that let you do that. You have to do this. You have to parade them through the streets with their bodies swinging. and get a crowd of people to agree that this is okay. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Those are the steps that have to happen to get from this book to the original trilogy, where everybody just assumes on its face that the district people are barely human, if human at all. You know, it doesn't just happen overnight, and it doesn't happen by decree. You have to get people to buy into it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want to sidetrack us, but anyway. But yeah. So
it is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So so I'm so sorry, but the fact I really love this. The food served everywhere is like explicitly described, because we always need to know like where he's getting his meals from and how this works as well. But Coriolanus, when he's talking to the dean, says the procession was very moving, and the dean says, "Did you think so? I found it excessive and in poor taste." Taken by surprise, Coriolanus let out a short laugh before he recovered and tried to look shocked. The dean dropped his gaze to Coriolanus's blue rosebud. It's amazing how little things change. After all the killing, after all the agonized promises to remember the cost, after all of that, I can't distinguish the bud from the blossom.
This was fascinating.
Don't be late to lunch. I hear we're having pie, which is what he had been eating when they last had their little moment.
When we found out that Dean Highbottom was the one that came up with the Hunger Games and as a student, and I talked a little bit about like maybe, you know, he's dealing with a lifetime of regret, like this monster that I created. I don't know about the ages and who would have been in school with whom at the time, but this bud to blossom, where is it? It's amazing how little things change. Blah 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 blah. I can barely distinguish the bud from the blossom. That feels like father like son.
I thought so too.
I can barely tell y'all apart. So now I'm wondering, like, maybe Dean Highbottom went to school with Snow's father, and maybe some of the friction there is you know, maybe it's a little bit of that. I had theorized that maybe Dean Highbottom, I don't know if you had brought it up to me and I went off on it, or if I thought of it. I'm not really sure, but I think it was you wondering if maybe Dean Highbottom saw himself in a young Snow. And maybe that was the tension. But now I'm like, this little bud blossom line is like, oh shit, maybe this is old school beef. Maybe this is something between him and Snow's father, and he sees Coriolanus just being just like his father. Like nothing has changed at all. All the shit we said we were doing. It's like it's the war to end all wars. Until we have another war.
Like a general sense of like the second generation.
Mm-hmm. That's good too, right?
Like Coriolanus specifically, but just sort of like y'all are doing the same shit, you know?
Yep. That's true too. But yeah, he definitely does seem to have something specific to Snow though. But that could just be because he's a bit of an asshole. And not very likable. If you can see through his fucking, you know, his act, then you know what. Once you see what's really behind those eyes, there's really not much to like there. So,
true enough.
So he goes to eat. This time he does not, like the last time we had the big luncheon. You know, he was very self-conscious about looking too hungry. Today he was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna eat. I'm grieving."
Yeah.
and he
has a moment of sort of like, is this bad that I'm like losing control of myself to the point where I don't give a shit? And he's honestly, it seems like he's so tired that he doesn't have the energy to be worried about it. It's like the vibe of just like, whatever.
And then so Janus can't eat because he is actually grieving and disgusted by what he just saw, has no appetite. and Corey is just like, just slide that, just put it in his napkin real quick. Just put it in his napkin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing too, right? Like, we just saw a dead body be paraded through the streets, like hanging over a bunch of shackled children, and then none of us lost our appetites.
Yeah. Yep. It's not even really on his mind here, like,
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. But yeah, and I kept thinking that he was going to like eat the food himself. But this is for Lucy.
Yeah, I thought he was going to take it home too, but it's for Lucy. And he what does he say to Sejanus as he's getting the food? Sejanus
says, "You're quite the rebel," and he says, "Bad news, all right." Yeah. It's so much more true than you know, even, sir.
So then we have this weird thing where there is this when they are going to meet the mentors, but there's like hardly anybody there, or is that a little bit later?
I think this is that where they go to the Capitol Arena.
Oh, you're right. This is the arena where things.
In its day, the huge state-of-the-art amphitheater had been the site of many an exciting sporting, entertainment, or military event. While the original structure stood because it was a high-profile spot, it was a target for bombers. It was battered and unstable, useful only as a venue for the Hunger Games. So that's a real interesting line as well, just telling us where their mindset's at. Of like, this place looks like shit, we may as well hold the games here. It's just the optics of this don't matter at all right now. It's not just the whole mindset behind the games is very bare bones. And we do hear like from a few people that they don't like them. Even when he's talking to what's her face that gets bit by the snakes, she's like, do you think this means that they won't hold the games? And there's almost a hopefulness there. And she's like, I know you don't like them. Or maybe he says it. One of them replies like, well, nobody really does.
Yeah. He says it to her and she's like, yeah, nobody really does. Yeah. Which takes us back to the beginning of like what this is all about, is like, how do you get people to buy in to this? Mm-hmm. And we know that eventually the answer is you have to give them a show. People don't want to see dead bodies floating down the street on a crane, when, and you know, what's interesting too, is I hadn't really thought about it. So when we watch the games in Katniss's timeline, you see the savagery, you see the killing, right? But then they just come and scoop the body up. And then they show a nice, like, picture, like they're playing their trading card picture up in the sky, There's no displaying of the bodies once the tribute is dead, because that's not what people want to see. Like, they want to see the action of it, but they don't want to see the result of it, They're there for the gore and the violence, but not the consequences of the gore and the violence, if that makes like any sense. So they can be removed from it. There's distance. Here in this timeline, of this book, there's no space. There's like the games are happening in this ramshackle place that holds bad memories for everybody who's watching. It looks like it's going to fall apart. The tributes are all like, none of them are specimens. None of them are like attractive. None of them are engaging.
We don't have careers yet.
They don't have careers yet. They don't have personality. They are dirty and scrawny, and they're not gussied up and made to look pretty before they're presented. Remember how like nobody even saw Katniss. Saw Katniss at the reaping, and then you don't see her again until she's been like stripped bare and scrubbed clean, and then presented as like an attractive young woman. like it's sanitized. That's the word.
Yep.
And it's not yet. This is raw and grimy and dirty. And who wants to watch any of this? Nobody wants to see this.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider the context of the Capitol at this time, which is, again, not great yet. Mm-hmm. You know? So people, people have their own grime in their real life and their own starvation to deal with. They don't want to watch a bunch of starving. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, yes. Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, later on when he says the point of the games is hope, there's almost like a, assumption, I guess, that this is about hope for the districts. But I was like, is that also true of, like, the people in the Capitol? Mm-hmm. That they can be like, oh, well, we're, even though they live these terrible lives, we give them this opportunity. Mm-hmm. Like seeing it as almost, a bequest somehow.
Yep.
And there being like an element of hopefulness for them. I don't know.
How benevolent of us. How bad could we possibly be? We can't be that bad. Look how we cheer for them. Look how we give them gifts, Yeah. Look how we bet on their success. How can we be the monsters, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, all right. There's a moment here with Coriolanus stuffed the food-filled napkin in one of his front pants pockets and kept it covered with the hem of his jacket. And he sees Lysistrata, who is very tiny, and she has brought in some ointment for Jessup's injuries and says, you can't let anybody else see this. So she's doing something here, and he's sort of admiring that a little bit, that she's just like got grit is the word that he uses. Mm. And there's a mention of how there's different entrances to this arena based on like who you are, and that there's like the token for admittance from the trolley area versus the area for the, wealthy people who are in boxes. And let's see. Peacekeepers posted at 2 turnstiles, pumped tokens into the slots so each tribute and mentor could pass through simultaneously. At each rotation, a cheerful voice piped, "Enjoy the show!" I don't know why that got to me so bad, but that is so grim. I hated it so much. Just this voice, just like echoing in this
basically Effie's voice.
Oh God, yeah, basically. Can't you override the ticket barrier? We could if we had the key, but no one seems to know where it is. And just how disorganized this all is, So he gives her the food, and these cameras show up, and he begins to realize, like, I got to get my shit together, because he is, like, just not quite conscious yet, coming in here, and is letting his amazement at the size of this place show, and he has to pretend that it's, like, not impressive, actually, and let all of the other fucking, like, doe-eyed hayseeds look around and be impressed instead.
I love earlier he's like plebeians, not poor, plebeians.
Yeah. Yep. He finds out that we did get a meal for the tributes, and he's wondering if his conversation with Satyria had anything to do with that. She says, mostly bread and cheese. We got dinner and breakfast too, but don't worry. I got plenty of room left for whatever's in my pocket. And then they have like just a regular kind of conversation. She mentions that she liked his singing and that his voice had authority. And when she's saying that, she says like, people here think I'm lower than a snake's belly. And he like laughs and says that her expressions are funny. And mentions the cake with the cream. And she says, where I come from, cake can be pretty dry. And cream's as scarce as hen's teeth. And it's just her doing, like, the thing again. Yeah. And
I love
they're in the midst of this little thing, it's cute. And then we have it blow up.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was I was really caught off guard as everybody was.
Indeed.
Because I was like, is he having like a flashback to when he was a kid? Like, what's happening here? But no, it's for real. It's some explosions are going off, and the place, because it's so fucking rickety, is just falling apart on top of everybody.
Yeah.
And
he winds up getting pinned under like an I-beam or something. It's bad. Like,
yeah. At one point, he's on the ground and he can see Lucy, and he has to like kind of like yell / gesture to her to use the handkerchief to cover her mouth from the dirt and the soot and everything. And she's curled up in a ball with her fingertips in her ears. Because she's handcuffed still.
yeah.
And then, the beam falls. And she comes and he sees her, and it looks like she's about to make a break for it. And
yeah, there's definitely a moment of her like considering.
He screams her name out, and she stops and thinks. And then he says, please. He calls her Lucy Gray, please. And she gave a last look at whatever had tempted her, and then she ran to his side. And she takes the beam off. And we find out later that Marcus, who was the Janus's tribute, has gotten away.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
this dude is MIA
for it, and maybe she had an opportunity to follow him wherever he was going.
That makes sense. Later on, Grandmam says, like, I'm sure that she just realized if she ran that she'd get shot down, basically. And I don't know if that was part of her evaluation. In the moment, it just seems like she's convinced to help him because they have this relationship that they have developed. But I like to think that his grandmam was right.
I think maybe she was
just
weighing
kind
the
of
odds.
took a moment and was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And just like,
yeah, what are my chances? What are my better chances?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And we find out that, some people did run for it and get shot. And one girl made it like over to a cliff, but like over a wall or something, but ends up just falling to her death. And they lose, like, I forget the number, but they lose quite a few mentors and several tributes. I think it's like 6 and 8 or something like that. It's a significant number.
Yeah, it's a big enough number that it does sort of feel like, is there going to be anybody left? Like,
listen, I was like, what are we doing? The games are canceled, right? But it's
again, though, it's interesting. Like, if this happened in Katniss's time, if there was some sort of massive accident that caused the death of a bunch of tributes, I have no doubt that they would go ahead and reap again, because they need the games to be a certain way. But here, their deaths are the point, so they're not doing the show, so they don't care. It feels like it's like, well, they were going to die anyway, so whatever.
Right.
You know,
and this is much more about the experiment of trying to change the game. I feel like they would have just taken a couple of months to regroup and then just tried it again.
Yeah.
So we find out that, let's see, how many died. There's both pairs from districts 1 and 2 had, made a break for it. District 1 kids had been shot dead. The girl from 2 made it to the river, died in the fall. Marcus from District 2 disappeared completely. I love this, leaving a desperate, dangerous, powerful boy loose somewhere in the city. I don't know why. I just love that.
Yeah. It's got a real ring to it.
It does. It really does. And then the the students, I think we find out a little bit later, who all didn't make it, but it's a good number of them. I think the twins died. The ring twins died.
Yes. And he is genuinely like, oh, I kind of liked them. Huh.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the more, like, the bigger displays of emotion directed at the actual person versus his own circumstances.
Right. Yeah. So, 3 mentors dead, 3 hospitalized, 4 if you count Clemensia, 6 tributes dead, 1 escaped, several wounded. If Dr. Gall wanted a makeover, she'd gotten it.
Sure did.
And then, because he's in the hospital, Clemensia comes to see him.
Yeah.
Y'all. She wakes him up in the middle of the night, in the wee hours, it says, and the sight of her, quote, ravaged face. The snake venom or the antidote had left her golden brown skin peeling, the whites of her eyes the color of egg yolks. Worse was the twitching.
That's so horrifying.
It really is. And the twitching caused her face to grimace and her tongue to jut out. Y'all, come on. We know what this is. I don't want it to be what it is, but we know what this is. And then it says, she hissed. I shouldn't be here. I love that it says she hissed.
She hissed.
I shouldn't be here. Don't tell them I came. Why won't anyone come to see me? Do my parents know what happened? Do they think I'm dead? And he is like, I saw your parents on the first day. What are you even talking about? And we find out that no one has been allowed to see her. And she says, I have to get out of here. I'm afraid she's going to kill me. It's not safe. We're not safe. And she starts talking about, it's Dr. Gall. You know, you were there. You saw what she did. And he's like, girl, it's the snake bites. You're sick. You're fine. You're going to be fine. And she rips open her hospital gown. And I said, how do you do? This was no good. No good at all.
I said,
no good. I could not have been less prepared for what was under this fucking hospital gown. I don't, I just wasn't thinking in this way. I just wasn't. I just simply was not. She is got a patch of skin over her chest and her arm that is all the different colors that the snakes were, these different pinks and blues and yellows, and their scales. It had a reptilian quality to it, he says. And she starts shrieking, and it's spreading. So by then, she's making enough of a ruckus that some attendants come, and they snatch her away. And he is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And he starts thinking about the Avoxes and the modifications that Dr. Gall is doing on them. And he's like, is that what's happening? Is that why her parents haven't been to see her? If she dies, would he now? Because now we're back to thinking about himself. Mm-hmm. If she dies, would he have to disappear as well because he was the witness? Had he put Tigress? I appreciated this. Had he put Tigress at risk by telling her the story? That's him thinking about someone outside of himself, and I think that was genuine, right? So good for him on that.
Yes.
And then, just in time for the morning, a doctor shows up and is like, hey, you got a visitor last night. She give you a little bit of a scare? It's fine. She's going to be fine. It's all fine. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It's going to work its way out of her system. That's all. It's fine. She's just quarantined. And I have never so desperately wanted to believe a pile of lies. This motherfucker's lying. He's lying. I wasn't sure when I first read it, but now I'm reading it now, and he's lying. But I just don't understand how Dr. Gall thinks she can get away with this on a capital child. But maybe she can. I mean, really, like, who's going to check me? Maybe she really can.
That's kind of what it comes down to, is apparently being head game maker is, like, quite a position of power. I'm not totally sure I buy it, considering how early on in the games we are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, it's just sort of a, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean,
it's definitely what?
I was agreeing. It's giving, Dr. Gall has been given a long rope and basically told, do whatever you want to do, try to keep it quiet. As quiet as you possibly can. Don't like make a big display of it. And it's been about 10 years now. This is the 10th games. They are still keeping things quiet in the sense that they haven't let Clemmie's parents see her, so they're still covering for what she's doing. We know that Snow only saw what he saw because he got turned around and got lost and was in an area that he wasn't supposed to be in. So the shit that Dr. Gall is doing, a lot of it is still under wraps, but she seems to be becoming emboldened, and that will happen after 10 years of being told you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. You start to get a little cocky,
Yeah.
And so maybe the power of that is starting to get to her head, and she is now doing things that probably would get her a little bit of a talking to, like a real soft reprimand. Like, Dr. Gall, you can't just be snatching up capital children, right? You know better than that. You know what I mean? Like, not like she's not gonna lose her job or nothing, but she's gonna get a little like a, please, ma'am, can you keep it to the A-boxes? There's
can you
plenty
just
of
restrain yourself.
you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what it feels like. And oh my God, what does he say? The doctor is like, you can go back and visit her. You can cheer her up.
This doctor. I can't tell. Does he believe this? Is he just saying what he needs to say? Like, what are you doing?
I can't call it.
Wild.
So then we have more funerals.
Oh yeah, there's like you said, there's just so many more deaths than I expected. Yeah, even with the explosion, I just figured it'd be one of those things where, like, oh, a terrible thing happened, but mostly people were fine. I just thought it was going to be okay. And, like, not that anybody major close to our main character dies or anything, but it just was more sheer numbers than I thought.
Listen, this fucking performance, he doesn't have to sing again because they just use a hologram of when he sang the last time. And he gets to experience himself. And he is pleased as porridge. Is that a thing?
Pleased as punch.
Punch. That's the thing I think people say. Who is ever pleased with porridge? When has anyone ever been pleased with porridge? You like porridge, don't you?
With punch. It's pleased as punch. And I don't really know how pleased punch is. Is it punch like Punch and Judy?
No,
I think it's like pleased as punch.
No, I think it's the drink.
I don't. That just me. Okay. Pleased as punch. Let's see. Why do we say pleased as punch? Yep. Italian puppet plays. The original saying was proud as punch, and it had a negative connotation because Punch is vain, pompous, and normally pleased with his victories over his spouse.
So it is Punch and Judy.
Yep.
Oh, look at you.
That was right. That was like the only thing that made any sense. So that was why I clung to it.
Let me tell you, right now. You heard it here first.
What's up?
I have heard Punch and Judy, like that phrase, most of my life. Mm-hmm. I have absolutely no idea who they are, what it means, what it comes from. I did not even know they were puppets that had personalities that would have sayings.
Okay. Yeah, it's basically like this incredibly abusive relationship and lots of punching. That's why he's called that. And there's also like, I've seen fragments of the plays that circulate to this day, and it's like, what if Tom and Jerry, but like husband and wife.
Oh, it's like Andy Cap.
Who's that?
Andy Cap is is like a Sunday comic serial. He's also, they make those hot fries that are real tasty, but really he's known for being a cartoon character. And he hates his wife, and he would rather go to the bar and drink than go home because he hates his wife. I don't know if he ever actually hits his wife in the comics, but there's a real energy there. There's a real energy that, like, after the last panel, there's like an invisible panel that you don't see where he's just beating the shit out of his wife. And I want to say that it might even be racist, because I think it's like, I might be speaking out of turn, but I want to say that he's like supposed to be Irish, which is like wildly offensive, right?
Okay.
But I'm not real sure about that. But I feel like whenever they used to draw him, they drew him in such a way that you would be like, "Oh, I see what you're doing here," without actually like saying it. You know what I mean? Like not saying the quiet part out loud. But yeah, like he hated his wife, and then like the comic would be over, and you'd be like, he is beating the shit out of her right now. Just because the comic ended. I know that was the next frame, because he just like goes to the bar and drinks all the time and doesn't never win. And his wife is like a real nag, you know, and he hates to be around her. Yeah. Marriage, shit, am I right?
It's considered entertainment is just truly like, ugh, I know we said unhinged already, but like, come on. So let's say, later at the academy, as he looked down from the balcony onto Heaven's Beat Hall, the empty chairs rattled him. He knew in his head that 8 tributes had died, that 1 was missing, but he'd not envisioned how that would ripple through the pattern of the 24 little tables, leaving a jagged, disconcerting mess. No tributes at all from districts 1, 2, 6, or 9, and only 1 from 10. Most of the kids who remained were injured, and all looked unwell. As the mentors joined their assignees, the losses became even more pronounced. 6 mentors were either dead or hospitalized, and those partnered with the escapees of District 1 and 2 had no tributes at their tables and therefore no reason to show up. Livia Cardew had been vocal about this turn of events, demanding new tributes be brought from the districts, or at least that she be given Reaper, the boy assigned to Clemensia, who everyone thought had been hospitalized with the flu. Her wishes had not been accommodated, and Reaper sat alone at his table, a bandage stained with rusty, dried blood wrapped around his head. So, I just love that there's this chick that's just like, rate more children. Go take more children. I need a like, Jesus fucking Christ. Ugh, gross.
The thing about what made me say that he was so pleased with himself is when he's watching his hologram perform. And he's just
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. No. It just says that people were always saying he resembled his handsome father more every day, but for the first time he could really see it. Not just the eyes, but the jawline, the hair, the proud carriage. And Lucy Gray was right. His voice did have real authority. Overall, the performance was quite impressive. This is him. This is his assessment. This is him. Talking about his own shit.
God, I just really want to, like, once again remind the audience that I got Snow as the second highest character alignment, and I just keep not knowing how to feel about that.
Oh, boy. So anyway. It ends with, let's see. he sees Lucy Gray one more time at this little meeting, and the dynamic has shifted, because before he was the gracious benefactor bringing her treats and news and the mentor, and now she has saved his life, and all he is bringing her are some fucking cookies, and it seems inadequate.
I know that you said, and he's the mentor, but you had just said bringing her snacks and cookie, and then you said the mentor, and it sounded so much like you said, and dementors, like he's bringing her also dementors, and I just had a moment of like, what? The mentor.
Listen,
right, got you.
If he could, he would do that shit, though. If he had those at his disposal.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I love the fact that it really feels like the power dynamic is like out of whack all of a sudden, and he does not know how to handle this at all.
I love the parallel to him resenting owing somebody something to Katniss being indebted to people and how much she hates that. I love that.
I didn't even clock that.
Yeah. He would never be the same. He would always be in her debt. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. I'm telling you guys, I'm enjoying this more on the reread with this analysis stuff. Like, it's just more fun than just reading it, in my opinion. I don't know. There's some. So, she asks, "Are you telling people I saved your life?" And he says, "Well, I did. I told my family. Thank you." And she says, "Well, I had some time on my hands," which is such a weird response. Like, I don't even really know. It's just meant to be like a little joke, I guess, but it felt so subtle. I don't know if that's the right word, but like it just genuinely had me for a moment like blinking and going, "What?" She's a little bit of a weirdo. I like her. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I like that a lot of the time it feels like what she's saying is very loaded. I just don't always know what it's loaded with. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
almost everything she says feels like there's like 4 or 5 layers happening at a time with every remark. She's a really interesting character. I am hopeful that we get to spend more time with her as the book progresses, because she's fascinating, and we really haven't had much time with her. I know this is like Snow's POV and you know, whatever's whatever, but I hope we get more of her, because she is just such an interesting character. And granted, we're only seeing her through his eyes, so we don't know what's going on in her head, but it appears that she is handling this completely unreasonable set of circumstances with a certain amount of do I want to be fancy? Nah, I don't. Do you want to
say aplomb?
I was thinking about saying it. Yeah, I was.
I feel like you can. That's fine.
I was thinking about going there. And like, granted, like in her head she must be spinning every which way but, you know, loose, but she has managed to at least present to Snow at least a sort of self-possession, and I just think that's fascinating. So I hope we get to spend a little bit more time with her in the upcoming section of the book, because this is I don't know what the next chapter is called, but I know that this is one of those breaks, and the next part of the book is called The Prize. So we'll see exactly what that is all about.
Tee-hee. Yeah, so he says, "I hope I can repay you. I hope so too. I don't know how. You could start by thinking I can actually win." Impatience tinged her voice. I love this. I love the impatience. It's really giving like she's a little bit just irritated at this point.
I also like that she's like calling him out because he's been like very secretly thinking just to himself, she's got no chance. She's so weak. She's so small. She's so hungry. She'll never make it. And I think because he's such a good performer, he was under the impression that maybe she was not checking for that and wasn't noticing it at all. Right?
Yeah.
And, or at the very, very least, because he doesn't think really about much outside of himself, he never stopped to think whether she was picking up on any of that or not. So I love that she's just like, hey, and by the way, you know, it would be cool if you thought I could fucking win. That'd be awesome. Because I feel very confident that he was under the impression that she had no idea what he was thinking of her as far as that goes.
I think you're correct. Definitely. And it's interesting to think about how many people are fooled by his behavior externally, and that she, like, I'm not going to say that she isn't fooled, because she does at one point say, like, I think you would have come to see me even if I weren't your tribute. Or maybe she doesn't say that, but that it's not all about like the classwork for him. And says, like, you know, you're a rare one. And I don't think that's true. So I can't tell. Does she really believe what she's saying to him? Or does she know that he's like a banana pants and she's doing what she can to flatter him and make it seem as if she's more naive than she is? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I don't know if I have an idea about that just yet.
It's an interesting question, and I'll be perfectly honest. I'm not presenting this as a theory when you get an answer about it later. It's very much up for interpretation in a lot of ways.
Oh.
And, you know, like, this isn't something that we get definitive. It's just, it's a remaining question. How much of this is a show? How much of it is real? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. All right. We'll see.
She's just trying to be like, you know what? I just saw what time it is. Yeah, it's late. It's after midnight where RoShawn is, so we really do need to wrap this up. I can't believe how long we're taking over every episode we record on this. This is so excessive. Anyway, I'm going to say hi to new patrons next episode, because RoShawn really does need to go to bed. You guys, she's been through it. She needs a little breaky break. So, I want to just really quickly say thank you to everybody who donated to the Trevor Project fundraiser that I did. I was able to raise $600, which was $100 over my goal of $500, which was an amazing way to start Pride Month off. And just thank you so much to everybody, and appreciate you all. I even had some people send me money for Pipsqueak, the kitten that we discovered. And it was enough to take her to the vet. Thank you, Jamie, and get her a little bed and some food, and she's all set up. And we found out from the vet she does not have worms. I was genuinely her round belly made me think that for sure there were worms, but no, she's just got a real round little belly,
kitten belly,
like a bowl full of jelly. And if you guys are interested in seeing more of Pipsqueak, you should go on the old TikToks, because I am posting a lot of videos of her and Pippin. Also, I'm going through a reread of the first book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and I'm posting about that. So if you're interested in this is not an unspoiled read through. I read the first book already, but I'm going to give the next couple books a shot, because people have said they improve, and I may hate them, in which case that will be where it ends, is on TikTok. But maybe I'll like them, and I'll be like, I'm going to cover these. So, you know, just keep an eye on it. Don't forget, guys, go to patreon.com/unspoiled to support us. It really does mean a lot. Helps me pay RoShawn and pay Candace for both of their contributions and help. And also helps me to pay my bills and, give my pets the level of lifestyle that they deserve, which is really the most important thing. All right, everybody. We will see you next week. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Are you coming to the tree where dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.